So I've been testing and reviewing LED products for close to 4 years now, and every once in a while something comes along that completely redefines a category. Asahom just launched their new Permanent Outdoor Lights Pro, and let me tell you, they deserve a standing ovation for what they just pulled off. So without further ado, let's begin. Now at first glance, this just looks like your ordinary kit, but as we go along, you'll start to realize how different this is from anything else in the market and how this perfectly bridges the gap between a consumer-friendly option and a full-out DIY solution. I'll begin to get things unboxed, but as I'm doing this, right out the gate, the first thing that's going to blow your mind is that this kit can expand up to 800 feet. And what's even more exciting is that the entire 800 feet can act as one single continuous run off of a single controller. This is exactly what I've been begging these companies to at least have as an option, and to my knowledge, Asahom is the first to offer this. Now, as far as what's actually included in the kit, I have the 200-foot option, and I believe the approach they took when coming up with the game plan was that yes, we want people to be able to cut and do any custom work that they want, but we also want to see if we can give them enough options to minimize or altogether eliminate the need to do this. How this plays out on the 200-foot kit is you get a total of 8 5-meter long string sections, with each section having 12 LEDs on them. This is pretty standard and nothing unique here, but if you're doing the math, this only equals 96, and there should be a total of 144, and this is where things start to get interesting. They also provide 6 2.5 meter long sections that each have 6 LEDs on each string. This adds 36 total lights and brings the count up to 132. Now what's truly brilliant is that they give you 12 0.42 meter strings that each have a single LED on it, which brings us up to the 144. And I shouldn't have to tell you, but having these single strands is going to make any custom install that much easier and more than likely eliminate the need for having to do custom cuts and splices. And I also did a quick test, and thankfully they were smart enough to make sure that when these individual strands are connected, that they have pretty much the exact same distance between lights as found on the regular strand. Taking a closer look at the lights, and they went with some high quality, individually addressable FW1906 LEDs. These have both a dedicated warm and cool white LED on either side of the RGB diode. So above and beyond all the color options, you'll be able to get a nice looking high quality white output on these. Moving on, you get 4 6-foot long extension cords. And what's also important to note is that on each of these, you get the signal booster that cleans up the data so you can make longer jumps when needed. You get an additional 2 3-foot long extension cords with again the same signal amplifier on both of these. And finally, keeping in line with giving customers the most options when it comes to installation, you'll find 6 1-foot long extension cables to use. And I'll also highlight that these, plus a lot of their other accessories, can be purchased separately in case you need more. But what's cool is that most are also compatible with Govee kits, so I'll make sure to leave all that information in the description. Now this looks like a controller, but it's actually a fault detection module. If you ever have lights that go bad, this gets plugged in before the issue and it'll be able to tell you downline if it's a power or data problem or both. This kit also comes with a T-splitter, or what a lot of people refer to as a Y-split, and if you're not sure what this is, on a lot of homes you might have a section that you'd like to branch off from the main run, and this allows you to do exactly that. For power, they're using a 28.8 volt 4.1 amp unit, and what I appreciate about this is that they have a 6-foot long cord that would plug into the controller, but they also include an additional 6-foot long extender in case you need more distance. Now let's say for whatever reason you do need to do some custom cuts and splices. They include 4 gel-filled boxes with clamp-style connectors for you to do this yourself. These are pretty common for applications that require moisture protection, and I've worked with these in the past and they've always held up. And as far as how to use these gel boxes, let's first go ahead and cut a string and I'll walk you through the steps. Now on the back, and thank you Asahom for making this foolproof, the red line is your voltage and the black is your ground, and the middle unmarked cable is your data. Once cut, you can use your hands to peel apart the 3 wires that are all connected together, and then I'll strip back each of those to expose the bare wire underneath. And I'm super happy that they're using some pretty thick wires for the voltage and ground, and they seem to be pretty much the exact same quality as the Govee Permanent Outdoor Lights 2 kit that I just did a comparison review on. Next, you're going to do the exact same thing to the other side that you'll be splicing in. This could be another string of lights, or an extension cable, or you could even use your own wires, but the method is all the same. Then take one of the sides and insert the 3 wires into 3 different openings on the connector, and then push down on the lever to lock them in place. You'll do this for both sides, and when done, just make sure that the wires are all connected in the correct order, where red goes to red, black goes to black, and the middle data goes to the same. All that's left to do is take the gel-filled box and place the connector at the center and gently press down. Go ahead and close the box and squeeze together tightly so that the hooks on the side catch and that the box stays closed. So that's how you do a splice, but what if you need to end a run before the actual end of the string? For that, they give you 6 end caps to use in those situations. For example, let me cut one of the strings so that we have some exposed wires. You can then simply cap it off by using one of those 6 pieces that they provide, which are all filled with some silicone type gel to protect it from any moisture. Now let's move on to the controller, which in my opinion is the star of the show. When I saw that this was going to have dual outputs, I was worried that it was just going to be a marketing ploy in which all they did was split the data so that each output would simply be doing the same thing at the same time. Well, in this case, as soon as I plugged them in, I knew dual output actually meant dual output because these 2 strips were not doing the exact same thing. And yes, at this point, I definitely had a huge smile on my face. And if you're familiar with WLED, think of it as them using 2 separate data pins. Next, I installed the Asahom app. On the main screen, hit the plus icon and add device. It immediately found the Pro lights where I clicked add. You can enter in your Wi-Fi information, or at the bottom, you can skip and connect over Bluetooth. Once connected, you'll be greeted with this screen where I first went into the settings and then clicked on light number setting. And sure enough, there in all its glory were the 2 separate data outputs where I can then manually add the total number of lights I have connected to each output however I want. I could have all 144 lights connected to output 1, or I could have them all connected to output 2, or I could have them split up however I wanted between both. So back on the main screen, I first went to effects, and as I'm scrolling through these and reading the names, I finally realized what Asahom has done. They've essentially built an app that integrates pretty much all the best parts of WLED, but wraps it in a pretty package so that a beginner won't get intimidated by all the features. They've even brought over the ability to customize the attributes of most effects by hitting the circle button right here. And when you make any changes, you get that live preview of the current effect you're on right at the top. Now if I go back to the main screen and select palette, sure enough, all my favorite WLED color palettes are right there for me to cycle through under default. And honestly, when I'm using WLED, changing the effects and changing the color palette is what I'm doing 90% of the time, and the fact that they brought both of these capabilities into their app is extremely exciting. But what's also cool is that they added their own color library that you can find other schemes based on a bunch of different categories. And I especially thought that the national flag section was a nice touch to quickly get your country's colors displayed. You also have the option to go into presets. These are different effects and colorful animations that Asahom has put together, and if you're familiar with the Govi app, think of these as their scene section. Next, let's go into the pixel option. And think of this as your DIY settings if you wanted to create your own animations where you'd have control over every single light. But on the tab to the right where it says illumination, change the drop down to white, and then you can change it to whatever temp you want. And because we have both a dedicated warm and cool white LED on this chipset, you're going to be able to get a high quality output. And back on the main screen, if you hit the heart icon, you can save anything as a favorite for quick access later. Now another thing you'll notice is how snappy the response time is within their app, with all the functions happening pretty much instantaneously. The app isn't bogged down with any advertisements or bloatware, and you're able to get from point A to point B as fast as you're able to click. You're also going to get Sound React functionality in the Audio RX settings, and again, this is pulling over all the awesome WLED music effects. I played around with this for about 10 minutes and it worked flawlessly with no issues.
Test, test. Check, 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 check. Hello, hello. Check, check, check.
Moving on to the AI bot, and this is going to let you type, speak, or upload a picture, and it will set the animation and color scheme accordingly. But what I really liked about this is it actually gave you a preview of what it'll look like within the chat, so you can decide if it's something you want to set. And if you really like it, you can save it as a favorite right there for future reference. Next, let's go into settings, and I'm going to turn on advanced features, and then from there go into sequence setting. And this is where you can really start to appreciate just how much control you have over these lights with their dual data outputs. You're able to choose precisely what direction you want your data and animations to flow. Left to right, right to left, starting in the middle and going right, or starting in the middle and going left. And the fact that they even added a little blue traveling dot to help you understand what the differences are between the options lets me know that Asahom obsessed over every little detail for this release, and it's going to pay huge dividends for them in the future. Now back on the main screen, after we've enabled advanced features, you now have zone control. This allows you to break up your lights into 10 different zones so that you can control each section independent of each other. And if you're familiar with WLED, this is segment control. I'll add my first zone as LED 1 through 12 and hit save. So now when I'm on that zone, I'm controlling just those 12 lights. Then I'll go back and add a second zone and make those LEDs 13 through 24. Hit save, and I now have the ability to control either section separately. Now the reason why I'm going so in depth on this is because unless you're coming from a strong WLED knowledge base, a lot of this stuff might seem very confusing. But hopefully I'm explaining things in a way even someone with no background can understand how awesome this is.
Check, check. Test, test, test.
And for a quick little UI tip, if you hold down on something, a lot of times that's going to be how you delete, so make sure to remember that. So at least for me, the icing on the cake is when I found out these are not only able to run Asahom's app, you can also boot this into WLED mode and have full functionality within the WLED program itself. Once you toggle on in the settings, you can go into your Wi-Fi, find the WLED-AP network, enter in WLED1234 if it asks for a password, click Wi-Fi settings, search and connect to your home network, enter in your home network password, then go into the WLED app, scan for available devices, and you'll find the lights along with my many other WLED devices in the house. And when you go into LED preferences, it has all the information pre-populated where you just need to update your LED count. Now if you're new to WLED, I'll leave some beginner videos in the description that you can check out, but for those of us who are familiar, the fact that a major consumer-based company not only built their app to function like WLED, they also gave us the option to run everything through the actual WLED program itself. And this is a huge deal because this is the first time I can confidently say that the lines between a plug-and-play option and a full-on DIY solution are becoming very blurry, and I couldn't be more excited. Now to exit out of the WLED mode and back to the Asahom app functionality, hold down the B button on the controller for 10 seconds and that'll switch it back. So next up, and probably what's going to be most appreciated among everyone out there, is how easy it is to connect up to 800 feet of lights to this single controller. Now Asahom says that the max number of lights that you're supposed to have per power supply is 144, which is equal to the 200 foot kit. And I'm going to try making this as visually easy to understand as possible, but let me know if you have any questions. I'm first going to take all the lights that came with the kit and plug them into the first output on the left, and I'm not going to use any other power supply other than the one that's plugged into the controller. I'll go to the app and into light number settings, and since I no longer have any lights connected to output 2, I'll change that to 0, and then I'll change output number 1 to 143 since I did cut off the last light in one of the examples. Hit save, and all of our lights are now up and running. Now to add more lights, you have a couple different options. Since each data output can take up to 288 LEDs, I could add another complete 200 foot kit to the first output, and this is where you need to do your first power injection. And after finding the end of the run, I'll be using another power supply that will either come with certain length kits or you can buy separately. Then they have this plug and play power injection splitter that again will come with certain kits or you can buy that I can connect to our second power supply. Next, I can simply connect the end of our 200 foot run of 143 LEDs to the splitter and the beginning of our next set of lights. And again, this can be up to another 200 feet, which is 144 LEDs, but I only have an additional 100 feet, which is what you're seeing here, and that equals 72 LEDs. I'll then go to the LED count, and since we still have everything connected to the one data output, I'll add 72 to my 143 to equal 215. Hit save, and it will ask you to confirm that you've added another power supply, and just like that, we have all of our lights up and running. So the other way to add lights is, let's say you already have 144 LEDs or all the way up to 288 added to output 1. We still have output 2 that can handle up to another 288 LEDs. For this example, I'm going to take the extra power supply and injection cable and plug that right into output number 2. Then I'll connect my extra set of 72 lights to this. In the LED count for this current configuration, I'll put output 1 back down to 143, and then output 2 now has our 72 lights connected. Now, I personally think this configuration is going to be most popular because it'll allow you to have both power supplies right at the beginning, and then you can have a 200 foot kit connected to output 1 and another 200 foot kit connected to output 2 for a total of 400 feet. And I would imagine 400 feet is going to be enough distance for complete coverage on the vast majority of houses. And if you're more of a diagram visual learner, I'll leave a link to the power injection guide that they created so you can see all the different configurations of how this is played out. Moving on, let's talk about their T-splitter, because again, Asahom is the first to offer this type of accessory, and no, it's not just splitting the data into two identical sections. To make this as easy to follow, I'm going to connect 12 LEDs to output 1, and then another 12 to output 2. Now this is where I'm going to insert my T-splitter. You have your input side, your main output, and then your branch output. For this example, I'll connect the input side of the splitter to the end of our 12 LEDs in output 2. Then I'll connect another 12 LEDs to our branch output, and then I'll do 24 LEDs to our main output. Next, I'm going to go into LED count and enter in the total number of lights I currently have connected, which is 12 to output number 1 and 48 to output number 2 for a grand total of 60. From here, go back to the main screen on the Asahom app and go to Add Device. It's going to find the T-splitter and you can click Add and then Done. It'll bring you to this screen and you're going to change the model to S1080 and we can enter in the total number of lights we have connected to our branch output, which is 12. Hit confirm and those lights are now operational. And I was curious as to how these lights would fall in line on the full string, so I went in and created zone number 1 for LEDs 1 through 12, which is our first group, 13 through 24, which is our second, and then sure enough, LED 25 through 36 are counted as the branch output before moving on to lights 37 through 60 connected to the main output. Now the benefit of this, if it isn't obvious, is that you can run separate lights off in one direction, and once the data gets to the end of that run, without having to connect anything to the end of those, the data is able to seamlessly jump back to the main output lights and continue along the way. I know I've covered a ton, and I hope so far everything's making sense, but now it's time to do a quick little install in my house. I'll start here on the right, which is where I'll plug the main power supply into, and work my way to the left. And to get these attached, I'm going to be using the sticky pads, and as always, wipe down the surface before sticking, and always try to do this in temps above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything lower than that, and things won't stick as well. However, if you don't like the sticky pad option, you can always just use the screws that the kit comes with and do it that way. But if you're the type that can't stand visible wires and want something that'll blend in with your house, no surprise, Jacob over at PermTrack already has a track system available for this new kit, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. And Asahom is also set to sell their own track system, although at the time of making this video, I don't really have any details on it. And as a third option, they're going to have a wall mounting kit that allows you to slide the light into the housing, snap it in, and then this would get screwed into a vertical wall. And I suppose this is for people that might not have soffits, or if you want to install this in your house. But again, Asahom really is going all in, and it's quite impressive to see. Now as I'm coming up to the end of the garage, this is a perfect example of the flexibility of this kit. Instead of having to use a full string of lights, I can simply use 2 of the individual LED strands to complete the bottom section. This saved me from having to cut off extra lights, and now I can just plug in some of the extension wires to get me up to the second story of the house. I'll be combining 3 extensions in order to make the jump all the way to the star right here, and then I'll just be making my way to the left. And even though I told myself I would never get back on a ladder after my Govee Christmas video last year, here I am back at it, and I'm happy to report that there were no injuries. So we'll fast forward to nighttime, and again, because these lights have both a dedicated warm and cool white LED, you're going to get a very good white light performance. And at least for me, other than the holidays, I have mine set to a warmer white year-round at night. Now as far as some of my favorite animations, I really like Pacifica. This has a nice smooth gradient effect, and once you find something you like, it's fun to go to your color palettes and play around with different options there to find the perfect one. Beach is always one of my go-tos, but I also really like the forest one and breeze. If you're wanting something more dynamic, make sure to check out Color Twinkles, and this is a great example of being able to adjust the attributes of most effects by hitting right here. I'll go ahead and turn down the speed on this one for a much more calming animation. Then again, play around with the different colors until you find one you like. Palette is going to be another one of my favorites, and I'll generally reduce the speed on this one as well to get a smooth rolling effect. Now I'm going to quickly set up 2 zones so you can see how this works. Zone 1 will be my bottom lights, and Zone 2 will be the top. So when I have Zone 2 selected, I can set those to whatever I want, and then I can go to Zone 1 and be able to now just control those and set those independently of Zone 2. In this example, I have my top light set to white, and my bottom lights are reacting to sound. And as I start to wrap things up, I'll mention a few things. First, I'll be leaving links to all the different parts and accessories they offer, and in which many are also compatible with Govee, so make sure to check that out. And finally, just a huge shout out to Asahom, because the amount of thought that went into this kit is clear to see, and I hope it pays off for your company. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I hope you have a blessed day.